One of my favorite quotes is forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been any different. Now, I'm not actually sure whose quote it is. Maybe I should have looked that up before I started recording, but however, I think it's a quote that has applicability to all of us. We have all experienced hurt or betrayal or rejection at some stage in our lives. And I think oftentimes we hold on to anger and grudges and resentment because they feel like as if they have somewhat of a protective function, that it means that we won't allow ourselves to be hurt again in the same way. It also feels like as if we are passively punishing the person who hurt us in the first place. So it feels good to hold on to our anger. And yet the reality is when we hold on to anger and resentment and bitterness, when we ruminate over whether or not we should forgive another person, when we ruminate over past events that hurt us, we recreate the emotional experiences within our body, and our body responds with the stress response, and consequently our body is flooded with adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine, all of these stress hormones and neurotransmitters that make the body feel like it is still in a distressing environment. And our bodies are not designed to stay in the stress response for an extended amount of time. It has major ramifications for our heart health, for the efficiency of our immune system, and for our psychological well being. It makes us more vulnerable to depression, anxiety, less capable of coping with life, more vulnerable to eating disorders, substance abuse, and less likely to be able to connect with others around us because we are caught up in that ball of negative emotion. So it's not about asking ourselves whether or not we should forgive. What we should be asking ourselves is, how do I go about doing so? And I suppose the first step is recognizing that it's not necessarily going to be easy, nor is it something that you master overnight, because again, it takes a lot of self-awareness, it takes a lot of humility, and it takes a lot of commitment to actually work through, I suppose, our predisposition to attach to anger and to hold onto it. Because again, anger is an evolutionary emotion. It's one that has served us in so many ways for so long. We just need to know how to deal with it adequately. The second then is recognizing how to fully experience your emotions. Oftentimes we fast track to anger because it feels progressive. It feels like as if we are punishing another person, and this feels satisfactory to us. It feels like as if we are doing something with our pain. Whereas when we step into sadness and rejection and betrayal, there is a level of acceptance there which can feel very painful for us to sit with. And so oftentimes it feels easier to stay in the state of anger. However, in order for us to fully process what's going on, we need to be able to honor that sadness. We need to be able to coexist with it, to deal with the betrayal, to deal with the hurt, and then to move beyond it. And I suppose, as I said, it's being very mindful as to what it is that's going on for you emotionally as you go through the process, because our emotions chop and change quite a bit. You know, we might kind of go from anger to sadness and back again, and just being very mindful of where you're at in as many ways as possible. It's also about remaining accountable. Oftentimes we have a part to play in what happens in our relationships, so we need to take a certain amount of accountability for the way we react or the way we respond in our relationships. We also need to be aware of our own triggers and our own sensitivities, because again, we have the actual incident and then we have our response to it, and oftentimes our response can be a whole layering of pain from past experiences. And it's just, as I said, being able to take a step back and objectively look at what it is that's going on and ask yourself, okay, what am I actually reacting to here? What am I responding to? But this can be done in a very compassionate way. It's all about gaining as much perspective as possible without, kind of judging yourself nor judging the other person if at all possible. What is really helpful as well is recognizing that we all hurt, we all experience anger. I mean, oftentimes when when we're in pain, it feels like we're the only one in the world. However, the reality is everyone experienced distress and loss and grief at some stage along the line. And it's that actually unites us as opposed to the way we let it divide us sometimes. So it's about recognizing that everyone has their own cross to bear, and to try talking to people about what it is that you're experiencing, finding people who are very much in alignment with your values and getting another perspective. Because when we're bogged down in the emotions of an experience, sometimes it is very hard for us to see clearly. It's very hard for us to get a better understanding of the reality of the situation. It's also sometimes trying to see things from another person's perspective. I mean, we tend to be very myopic when we're in a reactive state, and it's recognizing that when you're in that state of adrenaline and cortisol, that you're not very rational, and you need to take a step back. You need to recognize when you are in that highly agitated zone and practice some deep breathing, maybe write things down, bring yourself back to a calmer place so that you're able to apply empathy and understanding and compassion and basically better judgment. And the more self aware we are, the more cognizant we are of our potential reactivity. Now, a caveat is that not all forgiveness requires reconciliation, nor does it imply approval of somebody's behaviour. I mean, sometimes we have to take a step back from a relationship and we may realise that it no longer serves us, or that we are no longer aligned with the person in question. And I suppose it's having the discernment to recognize what the correct thing is to do at any given time. I mean, if the relationship is toxic or abusive, or if the other person is unwilling to take accountability for their behavior, then we may need to take a step back. However, the majority of conflict resolution is about creating conflict intimacy. In other words, using our conflicts to strengthen our relationships through our own self-awareness, through a willingness to engage with each other and to repair efficiently and fairly and lovingly. You know, it's about strengthening our connections as opposed to weakening them. And it takes commitment, it takes a lot of work, it takes humility, and it takes as well the consideration that you might be in the wrong sometimes, that although you may feel very hurt, although you may feel an injustice has been done, that you have to be able to step out of the emotion whilst acknowledging it and tending to it, and consider things from other people's perspective, see a bigger picture, but also see your own point of view. If you would like to work on your anger, get in touch with me on my website. It's fundamentals.ie.